Hi friends, welcome to the Wild Side. I'm Steve Hall. Plants have always been a big deal on the wild side. We sometimes talk about the importance of native species and the battle against invasive ones. We often refer to the reliance of plants on pollinators to grow the food we eat. And we take you on adventures simply to appreciate the beauty of wildflowers. But our ancestors depended on the forest for their pharmacy. In a stroll across Sycamore Shoals State Park, we find flora that even today offers medicinal value. Fort Watauga was first built to defend settlers during disputes with the Cherokee Indians. Later, it was the mustering place for the Overmountain Men, a frontier militia that fought in the Revolutionary War. But this particular gathering outside a replica of the fort in Sycamore Shoals State Historic Park has more to do with the history of plants.
Most people have this plant in their yards. It grows pretty much everywhere there's a lawn. There's some plantain around here. And it's a useful plant because it has properties in the leaves that are great to treat bee stings and insect bites. You're going to crush it up real good in your hands. You can rub it like this topically, or you can apply it as a poultice and just wrap something around it, wrap some cloth around it, and keep it there for a couple hours on your sting or your bite. And it's a pretty effective treatment. The title of the program is Useful Plants of Appalachia. So my goal was to emphasize plants that historically have been used by both the settlers that came from Europe and settled here and the Native Americans, specifically the Cherokee, since they settled in these very grounds here. The whole Appalachian region is, I believe, the second most diverse place in the world as far as plant and animal species go. I think only second to the Amazon rainforest.
Seasonal Ranger Taylor Moorfield leads his group toward a trail along the Watauga River. And for the first time, his mother is a participant.
This will sound strange, but I raise sheep and I dye the wool with plants. And that's the plant knowledge I have. So what Taylor has is really different.
Most people know this plant, but they don't know it by the leaf. So I'm going to walk a little closer to you guys and point it out to you. Anyone have a guess? My mom has a guess. What's your guess? Dandelion. It is dandelion. Everyone knows dandelion by the bright yellow blossom, but it's useful to be able to recognize it from the leaf because right now there aren't a lot of blossoms out. Anyone know what dandelion means? It's not just like a happy lion that kind of runs through the woods. It's something else. Anyone? Okay, it's actually French, and the original way to pronounce it was Dandelion, which means teeth of the lion. And if you look at the leaves, they have kind of a sharp serrated edge that almost looks like lion teeth. Now, dandelion is just packed full of nutrients. It's considered a weed, unfortunately. It's got more vitamin A than carrots, and it's got a tremendous amount of vitamin C, and a half a cup of dandelions has more calcium than a full cup of milk. Sycamore doesn't have a whole lot of edible or medicinal properties, but it's still a useful plant. It's a hardwood, meaning it's useful for furniture, and you could build shelters out of it. For thousands of years, Cherokee and other Native American tribes used the plants here. They used the trees to build their homes. They used medicines from the trees. They ate a lot of the plants here. Anyone know this plant? I know my mom most likely does. Heart-shaped leaf, grows on the ground, pretty short. This is violet. It's also edible. Deer love it. It tastes almost like spinach. Anybody here eat spinach in their salads or anything like that? If you have some violet in your yard and you don't spray your yard with pesticides, you can go gather that stuff and make a whole salad out of it. It's actually pretty good. You put some ranch on it, some croutons. When the settlers came over from Europe, the plants were very different in some ways than the plants they had in Europe, so they didn't know many of the species. So the Cherokee, when they had a good relationship with the settlers, which it was at first, they educated the settlers on a lot of the uses of these plants, and that knowledge has been passed down for centuries at this point. And we still learn more today with the use of science. We can either prove or disprove if these uses are true. And many of them are, and so we still continue to learn today, and as long as that knowledge continues to be passed down, it means a lot to me to be a part of that. This is a silver maple right here, if I'm not mistaken. You can see the leaves have that Canada flag look to them. Now, something that the settlers did, and that still works today, and I think they learned it from the natives, is you can tap into a maple tree. Anyone ever heard of you doing that? Anyone tapping into a maple tree? You kind of dig a little hole carefully into the bark, I'd say about 1 inch to 2 inches deep. Sap will start to drain out like this, and you can catch that sap in a cup or a straw or Gatorade bottle, whatever, And it's the sap from the tree that they make maple syrup from. It's just a lot less condensed, but it's super, super rich in nutrients. It has some sugar in it. It's got a sweet taste. If you're careful, if you have a really clean tap, you can plug the hole afterwards to keep the tree from leaking when you don't want it to. And the tree can be, that same hole can be tapped over and over and over again, and the tree doesn't get hurt.
The group walks near the river where earlier 2 water snakes were hidden on a tree branch hanging over the bank. They are not poisonous, and neither is the eastern hemlock tree.
This is a tree that's kind of near and dear to my heart because they're struggling right now as a species. It's an eastern hemlock. Now I say hemlock and everyone's like, oh, poisonous, right? Because there's the water hemlock, which is a very poisonous plant. It looks totally different. It grows in the water. This is eastern hemlock, and it's a totally different tree. To someone who just glanced at it, they might think it's a gigantic cedar or even a pine because it has that coniferous look. But if you look closely at the way each little shoot comes out, it's got a fairly unique look to it. It's also high in vitamin C. You can make an amazing tea from these little shoots. Do you notice how when you look at these little shoots on the end of the branches, the ones at the very end are a little bit brighter? You see that? But it has sort of a minty, slightly sweet taste to it.
And not long after we learned how settlers and Native Americans benefited from tulip poplars, the Tennessee state tree, the plant hike came to an abrupt end.
This feels like it might be a pretty heavy rain. Did anybody bring rain gear besides me?
Well, Taylor was doing a wonderful program. We were learning all about dandelions and sycamore trees and plantains.
It was amazing. I learned so much.
And then all of a sudden we heard thunder, and then the lightning came, and then now we have rain.
Today, it made me sad we didn't get to it. It's the plant jewelweed. There's a few different kinds of jewelweed. It grows a little bit farther to our left down there. And the reason I love it is it's a remedy for the plant that everyone knows to avoid, which is poison ivy. So everyone knows poison ivy causes rashes and itches and stuff. Jewelweed is a remedy for that, a very effective remedy. If you crush up the leaves and you put them on your rashes and you wrap them up, leave them there for a couple hours, then you change the leaves. I got poison ivy last summer, and I cleared it up using jewelweed in about 2 days when it usually lasts over a week. I hope folks learned at least 1 or 2 plants. You know, when you're giving a lot of new information to people, it's easy for it to kind of go in temporarily and then they don't think about it and it leaves. But more than learning, I hope I just inspired people to get outside and to learn about nature a little more and just to feel a little more connected to the natural world than they might otherwise.
The rainstorm definitely cut our journey short, but we still had a lot of fun. You're welcome to walk on over to our website, wildsidetv.com, if you want to watch the story again or share it with others or experience other adventures we've had here on the Wild Side.
Tennessee's Wild Side, broadcast for nearly 2 decades, was originally created through a vision of the Jackson Foundation. The foundation remains a supportive partner in the mission to educate viewers about wildlife, natural resources, and opportunities for outdoor adventure. Wild Side is produced by Rockwater TV, with support from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, promoting wise uses of Tennessee's agricultural and forest resources to develop economic opportunities and ensure safe and dependable food, fuel, and fiber for all citizens. And with support from Tennessee State Parks, where you can camp by the riverside, retreat to the mountains, and escape the busyness of life. From Memphis to Kingsport, you'll find the perfect adventure in Tennessee State Parks.